Mecho Tales is a game that I have mixed emotions on. There are some things that I really enjoy about the game, but there are also things that I don't really agree with, and there are things that really hold it back from being that platforming game that you'll actually remember for years. The game opens up with a really nice presentation as you're introduced to the tutorial, and you have this atmospheric fantasy world of characters that you kind of get a little feeling for, but there are some things that I wish was touched upon a little bit more, being the story. There's not too much. It's a pretty simple story for a platforming game, and I guess sometimes that's okay. But there are things in terms of the gameplay design that really bring it down. I'm first going to go over what I loved about the game, and then I'm going to give some feedback to the developer, because there are some things that I really think can fix the game and bring up to that next level. Besides the game looking really well made and drawn, the controls were pretty spot on for this game. There weren't many times where I felt things were cheap because I died every time I did a jump. It felt just right, and that is something that some platformers get wrong. What I think the strongest point of this game is, and what I really look forward to while playing, is the different types of drones you can actually collect and buy from Pashy's shop. So you get these 7 weapons that you can get, and I tried out 5 out of 7, the Aquata Flameburster Swan Wave, Tesla, and the Bombasti. All of these weapons were pretty fun to use, although some were much more apparent to be more useful, especially the Aquata, which gives a more powerful attack but is slower, and it doesn't go as far as the standard drone you start with in the beginning. The Tesla was a pretty good weapon. It has a lot of ricocheting electricity that really makes taking out groups of enemies, and sometimes it works on bosses pretty good to just get those extra hits on. That was the weapon I actually first upgraded to, and it helped a lot because the standard weapon, while it's a really cool, this standard type of shots and damage to enemies, it felt somewhat boring. I don't know what it was. Maybe it didn't fire fast enough, but it's like something really felt off about using that weapon. And it wasn't until I first got my upgrade using the Tesla, and then going on to that using the Aquata, where I felt the game really opened up and it felt a lot more fun. The Swan Wave was something that I didn't really get a good feeling for. There were some instances where taking out multiple groups of enemies with it was good, but overall the arc and the kind of way it goes when you're shooting it wasn't that effective. But the Bombasti was a pretty good weapon if you're fighting enemies on the ground. It's like a weapon that just demolishes enemies. The other 2 weapons was the Corrosive, which I didn't get to use, and the Rocket, which I can imagine both of those being pretty good, but overall, I definitely think that is the highest point of this game. That's not to say that it doesn't have other good points. The enemy variety is pretty good as well. Sometimes you do run across the occasional larger enemy that was used previously before. It deals a little bit more damage, but for the most part, there are a lot of creative designs in this game, and that's what I really enjoy. Besides the drones and some of the controls, it's just the enemy variety. You get a pretty good variety on each world that you travel to, and in total there's 8 worlds with 2 levels, and it's kind of short though. Like, it's really weird. It's like there are some good things and some bad things about that. In total, it took me around 2 hours to complete the game, and throughout that time there are some things that kind of got a little confusing, and also at the same time there were some things that I felt could really be improved in the game. The second half of the game, you actually get the second character, Angel, and this character doesn't really do anything too much. I wish they gave both of the characters that you control something a little bit more unique. Maybe each character has their own type of mechs. That would have been pretty cool. But the things that really hold this game back, in my opinion, are the level design. While it looks really beautiful, there are some things that can't be ignored, such as the flatness. There's like so many flat spaces that you come across, and there are times where it somewhat deviates around that, and it gives you a more varied type of platforming experience. But a lot of times you're just going from left to right, or right to left, or just going straight up, and it's just really flat, and that's what makes it pretty boring in some cases. Sometimes you'll just be going across the screen, staying back, and since the enemy alert detection is pretty low on most of the enemies will pretty much stay off the screen to the right, where you can kind of abuse that. And sometimes you kind of want to do that because there's like a lot of platforming in this game where you'll go over pits and you'll get hit and you'll get knocked down, and there's really only 1 or 2 checkpoints sometimes in the level, and starting all the way back at the beginning was a little bit frustrating when I first started. A lot of the times I would just stand in the back because some enemies have some really fast projectiles, and while it is possible to dodge them, they come out a little too fast for my taste, and it was something that I was like, I wanted to just give this a fair opinion on, and I did it over and over, and I still found it really annoying of how fast some projectiles come out. Other than that, there aren't too many issues in terms of the level design, as I mentioned, besides it going from really a flat plane. There were some really cool instances in the desert level where you have these gusts of wind coming up, and I wanted more of that kind of stuff. And again, later on in the levels, there are spikes, and that gives you that danger of not wanting to jump too high. This was varied throughout the whole game. Some patches it was there, and other patches it wasn't. And it's just something that I would have loved to see a lot more of. And while we're discussing the level design, moving on to the bosses, this is something that for the most part was okay besides the boss HP. Now all the bosses besides one have a ton of health, and this isn't something that's like super terrible, but sometimes the bosses feel like meat sponges and they would just not die, especially the last boss. The last boss had way too much HP, and it's something that really dragged on, and I died probably like 5 times due to getting careless because I was like, oh my gosh, how long will it take to kill this boss? And then it's like I would die and get frustrated and I would just start all over again. Definitely toning down the HP of all of the bosses minus the second last boss, which was really weird because that boss had the correct amount of HP I would think for a boss, and also having health bars to see how much life the boss has left would have been really good. And if you can improve on this or add this to the game, I definitely think toning down the bosses and also adding that health bar would help a lot. As I'm wrapping up my thoughts, there are so many things that I loved, and it's like certain things like the Mega Man type of segments going on disappearing blocks, or the fireballs similar from Mario, or sometimes you're even dodging going up a ladder, these pendulum blades coming to you left and right. And these are the things I was like, yes, that was so good. But then there are certain things that just drag it down, everyone. I would definitely say if you are a fan of a simple platformer, and there are certain things that I definitely think you might have fun, as this game has local co-op and there's a total up to 4 players, and I can imagine that being a little bit more fun in an experience. If things don't change in terms of the level design, I still am not entirely sure if you can have like a huge amount of fun. But overall, everyone, I definitely think it's a game worth checking out. Even if it goes on a price drop, I definitely think that in the future, for a little fun experience, if you have an afternoon, look to pick up this game, as it wasn't a mediocre game. It was just okay. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in to hearing my feedback and thoughts on Mecho Tales. It's definitely an interesting game, and one that, it took me a little bit of time to wonder how I wanted to really talk about this game. If this video offered any value or entertainment or anything like that, then consider subscribing and clicking the bell notification icon to stay up to date with some of the latest indie gaming content I release during the week. Now get out there and start uncovering awesome. Have a beautiful day.